After Code Geass, No Game No Life, and JoJo, this is my fourth video about chess in an anime, so I've grown pretty familiar with the concept. Or have I? Because this one really made me rethink my previous life. Instead of lazing around like this beautiful cat, we're going to use our brain to the maximum and analyze chess, but you know that the higher you climb, the harder you fall. But it's fair to say that chess in Cowboy Bebop was a roller coaster. Episode 14, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Is this XT fine? Is F continuous?
Okay, let's skip the plot twists that led to the characters finding three pieces that turned out to be, and I quote, standard cartridges for online chess. Using these devices, a character named Radical, Ed, finds the owner of the pieces, an elderly chess master named Hex. So the game should be serious. Oh, the Falkbeer counter gambit. It derives from the king's gambit after d5 and takes, but when we see the board again, the dark squared monarchs, if you will, are gone. Okay, the king's missing is justified by the plot. It was a cartridge, and the characters had a theory that there's a cipher in its memory.
But I'm the queen!
And we see knight c3 on black's turn. And when they show Hex's point of view, the queen is still missing. So there's a 0 for the amount of frames with the black queen. But the creators still have half an episode to redeem themselves, or to fall in a deeper pit. Sometime after, we see this. It's another game for sure because black's pawn is on e6, not e5, and it was easily recreatable. French defense, f4. It's the variation named after the best chess player of the 1830s, notorious for beating John Cochrane and Alexander McDonnell. Knight c3, bishop b4, d3, castles. White unpins the knight, and d5. This is a theoretical line. I have to subtract that pawn from 5. The roller coaster has started going. Okay, the next position, that's something you show in a psychiatric center, not an anime episode about chess. In the anime itself, there was a circus performance, in a bad sense.
Checkmate! Oh, so Ed thought. Well, at least my knight takes your rook.
So the move played is knight takes rook and at qg5. Let's not waste our time here. It's getting a negative grade. Unfortunately, or fortunately, at this point, the board was showed very little in the following minutes. Then we saw this piece of a position, and there's nothing defending g3 or g2, so the queen sacrifice would be at least unnecessary. Then it changes. Even when we only see a segment of the board, it's horrible. Then black checkmates white like this, and this is a well-known queen endgame trick. It occurred in a 1955 game between Borisenko and Simigan. After a queen check, white blunders playing the only losing move and resigns after f5. The continuation is on pass on, queen f5, and checkmate, but we should also consider the context. A girl played an out-of-form grandmaster and got into a drawn endgame and then blundered away. Let's subtract that blunder from the full grade, and another one for those annoying position changes in between the frames. That's all for the positions shown directly in the anime. The mean is 1.5, so that's a 1+, but there's still a lot to analyze. The King cartridge actually had 2 games inside, and both were based on real occurrences. However, Deep Blue has nothing to do with it. Actually, people were finding out about this game because of Cowboy Bebop, and there's a 15-year-old comment. It is Game 7 from the unofficial World Championship match between Morphy and Anderson, 1858 Paris, after which the American was declared the best chess player in the world. The first game was harder to recreate, but we have the starting and the last moves as well as the winner. So black won 23 moves. No, this doesn't fit. We need queen h5 mate. Here we go. It's Schulten Morphy, 1857. Both of the games were analyzed in Chess Before Steinitz. Let's see Morphy's genius. Schulten plays the king's gambit and Morphy responds with Falkbeer, accepted in e4. Now this pawn tries to disrupt white's development. There's knight c3, knight f6, e3, and bishop b4. This pin is a big problem for white. Bishop d2 unpinning it and e3. Black sacrifices a pawn to keep the pin and open the e-file. Castles and white goes back. Black takes out the knight, and white recaptures with the pawn, because if bishop takes after knight d5, it would need to go somewhere else anyway. Rook e8. Bishop blocks, and black puts on more pressure with the bishop. Now white needs to defend somehow, and they get a little greedy. c4, c6 attacking d5. Yakov Neistat notes, bishop c3 was stronger because after c takes d5, it covers his bishop brother with his own body just for it to get captured. And after knight recaptures, knight g4 continuing the attack. Back to the game where knight c6 was played. King f1, good. Bishop c3 was an alternative, but after the d4 trade, black threatens to take out the bishop, and then the knight with the rook to either deflect the queen or attack the exposed king by rook check. A brilliant knight sacrifice on h5, g3 which the knight takes, rook check, and if the king takes, there's queen e3 with eventual mate. so white would take with the queen and lose. So there might have been knight f3, but it gets taken, and the knight uses h5 to go to f4. Rook b1 is an interesting choice, but there's still knight d4, and then the e2 trade, and again, white gives up the queen just to not get checkmate. But the game was more elegant. Rook e2 and the now dead rook and bishop swap their roles. Now bishop is the pinner and offers his help to the knight on d4. Queen b1 to avoid a royal fork. Bishop e2 and king e1 was best as king g1 loses to knight c2, which can't be taken cause mate on e3, and subsequently this poor rook gets eaten by a horse. In the game, Schulten plays the worst move, king f2. Knight g4 check, king g1, and an exquisite sacrifice, knight f3. The d4 square is now vacant and the queen checks. Queen f2, king h3, queen takes f3, king h4, knight e3. Rook g1, a great defensive effort disallowing queen g4, but there's knight f5 forcing the king to g5 and queen h5 mate. Heading over to another brilliant game that showed how important development really is between Morphy and Anderson, or like in this anime, Grandmaster Hex versus Deep Blue. It starts with the Scandinavian. The queen gets kicked to a5, d4, and e5. Nowadays, this move is a big mistake as white gets a huge lead. There's an opinion that Anderson hoped for queen e2 trying to win the pawn, and here, after knight c6, pawn takes, a6, and with bishop f5 and king castling, black quickly gets an attack. But white just chooses to take and there's a queen recapture. Bishop e2, bishop b4, knight f3 sacrificing a pawn. Anderson accepts it, taking on c3 twice, and bishop blocks. Queen c5, rook b1. This is a moment for the books. White has very active pieces ready to strike, while black only moved the queen. Stockfish thinks it's equal, like just some Ruy Lopez position. But imagine you're a cat here. That's just wrong. It's really dangerous for black, and they deal with the biggest threat of bishop b4 and Morphy castles. Knight f6, bishop f4, castles. Another great decision by Anderson to give up the pawn on c7. Defending that would either lead to rook e1 with an attack, or if you discover the defense with the knight, queen e1, a silent move that launches an attack after bishop b5, queen d2, bishop f5, rook c1 pinning the knight, knight d5, bishop a4, knight f4, and queen recaptures. White is winning. Remember, in the game, the pawn was taken. Pushing the queen around with both rooks was better. But let's focus on the game finally. Knight d4 with an exchange, bishop d3. White's still better, but Anderson can defend by h6, but he plays bishop g4. His attacking mind fails him in this position cause knight g5 with two threats, on e4 and h7 using the overloaded knight to white's advantage. Bishop h5 was an attempt to save the game, but Anderson played rook d8. Queen b4 attacking b7, so black defends. a5 was maybe better, but it's still an endgame with a pig and an extra pawn for white. But it was already a choice between the devil and the deep blue sea.
Look away from the sea.
In the actual game, rook e1 was next, a5 and queen e7 forcing a queen trade. Knight d5, bishop h7, check king h8, rook takes f7, knight c3, and the rook flees to e1. Knight takes a2, rook f4, rook a6, and bishop d3. A double attack as the f7 fork is threatened, and Anderson resigned. This segment gets a full grade, but I won't consider it with the previous positions since it wasn't directly shown. Subscribe so I update the channel banner.